Hi guys, welcome to this video. I'm Prashant, I'm the founder of Wordpandit, and in this video I'm going to explain how do you prepare for SAP 2021, the VARC section. Our exclusive focus in this video is going to be the VARC section. I'm going to put up a video which is going to explain you how do you prepare for the exam overall, but today we are going to focus on the VARC section. So let's get started. What is it that I'm going to do in this video? I'm going to pick up previous year's SNAP exams, give you a quick overview of the patterns, identify the areas you need to focus on. So we'll focus on the facts, we'll focus on the actual exam patterns, and we'll try to derive what is it that you need to do for this particular exam. Remember last year the exam was curtailed to a time limit of 1 hour. They radically changed the exam pattern last year. They offered it in 3 slots. SNAP became a mini test, right? And there were 60 questions in total. VARC featured 15 questions. In fact, there was not even one single RC in the last exam, right? As a caveat, just to make sure that you're not stumped, you can expect a maximum of 1 RC in the exam, 3 to 5 questions. But that's just something that you've got to keep in mind. We don't know what's going to happen this year, but just keep it at the back of your mind. In general, SNAP is an easy test. It's a speed-based test. Expect something similar this year as well. It's a test of wits now. Remember, you've got to perform in that 1 hour. You've got to do your absolute best. So more than anything else, speed has become very, very vital in this test. In fact, this test, since it's just 1 hour, 3 sections, it really does not give you a time for a comeback, right? So you've got to get it right, and you've got to get it right at the start. You've got to be proactive in the exam. You've got to keep your energy levels up, and you've got to make sure you take enough tests in the 1 hour pattern so that you're able to perform with the required efficiency levels. What is the exam all about? If we look at the last year, there were 15 questions. These were all VA questions, no RCs. Out of those 15 questions, vocabulary featured in 11 questions. You had fill in the blanks, idiom questions, synonyms, compound words. So a mixed match. You had 2 questions on parts of speech. You had figures of speech as well. And you had 1 parajumble question. So you can see a very heavy focus on grammar and vocabulary. That's all that the exam was based on. This was the verbal portion. Now in the reasoning section of the exam as well, there were 25 questions. Now out of those 25 questions, 6 were actually verbal reasoning, syllogisms or deductive logic. You had 1 analogy. Then you had verbal reasoning, statement and course of action, statement and conclusion, statement and assumptions. So these were all the topics that were present, and these were questions which were present in the reasoning section. The others were non-verbal reasoning, logical reasoning, and so on and so forth, clocks, calendars. So those were the other topics. We are only focusing on topics which are related to English and verbal. Hence, these were the 6 questions which were based on the reasoning portion or the verbal reasoning portion, right? So even though there were questions, so you can look at it as the first section as a general English section which focuses on grammar and vocabulary alone, and the reasoning section has questions based on verbal reasoning. So that's the pattern analysis for the last year. If we go back a year before that, right, in 2019, then obviously there were RC questions as well. There were 7 grammar questions out of 26 VA questions, and there were 19 vocabulary questions. And if you look at the topics, right, vocabulary, odd one out, closed tests, synonyms, antonyms, prefixes, and within phrases and idioms, all kinds of mixed bag topics. And grammar had active voice, passive voice, parts of speech, figures of speech, so all these different topics, and a couple of RC passages, 1 short passage, 1 long passage. So that was the exam structure in 2019. Obviously, it was a completely different test then, 2 hour pattern. So my purpose of putting up this slide is to give you an illustration of these topics, right? So it's not about the number of questions, it's not about the pattern, it's about these topics, right? So you've got phrases and idioms, active voice, passive voice, fill in the blanks, parts of speech, prefix, synonym, antonyms, figures of speech, closed passages, odd ones out. So it's a complete mixed bag of topics. The year before that, again, the same thing repeats: synonyms, antonyms, fill in the blanks, phrases, idioms. There were some theta questions as well. There were errors in sentences, and you had direct, indirect speech. So if you look at it, the paper had active voice, passive voice, it had direct, indirect speech. These are not commonly asked topics in grammar, right? Especially in MBA entrance exams, these are not things which are generally asked. So if you club it with IIFT, right? So you've got 4 topics, right? So if you club IIFT and SNAP prep, IIFT had phrases and clauses, IIFT had odd punctuation question. Then you've got direct, indirect speech. And I'm just writing down in short form an active, passive voice. So these are 4 additional grammar topics, which are the non-traditional topics, or you can say these are topics that we generally don't study. We focus on basic parts of speech. So you've got basic parts of speech and these topics as well, which are added, right, and things that you got to keep in mind. Occasionally there are also questions which are based on article usage, a and the. So these 5 topics in grammar, these are additional 5 topics which you should prepare for IFT and SNAP in total, right? Your grammar prep should always be in totality for the different exams. You cannot look at any single exam for grammar prep because grammar is very, very vast and different exams ask different things. Now, if I go back to 1 year before that, again, the same thing repeats: synonyms, antonyms, phrases, idioms, fill in the blanks. Then you've got active, passive voice, correct form, parts of speech, which directly ask you whether it's a noun, adjective, adverb. So all these kinds of different things, couple of RCs and parajumbles. So one constant that we always find in the test is you get parajumbles, you get questions which are based on vocabulary, a diverse variety of vocabulary questions, and also you've got grammar questions, but these are all along different formats and patterns. So there's a consistency as well. So you've got to cover grammar from a very holistic viewpoint here for SNAP. Now, if I go for an overall analysis of the exam, the verbal reasoning portion, there is no critical reasoning, para summary, para completion. Para jumbles are there, but there is verbal reasoning, right? So verbal reasoning includes questions that we talked about in the SNAP 2020 pattern, statements, conclusion, courses of action, cause and effect reasoning, things such as that. So these are called verbal reasoning topics. So verbal reasoning and parajumbles are the 2 constants in the exam. Vocabulary, you've got different formats, different kinds of questions, synonyms, antonyms, etymologies, fill in the blanks, close tests, idioms and phrases. You name it, you've got a topic there in vocabulary. Grammar, again, lots of unique topics. We've already covered the 5 topics that you've got to keep in mind. You've got to keep in mind articles, you've got to keep in mind phrases and clauses, direct, indirect speech, phrases and clauses primarily for IFT. So this is, I'm giving you combined advice for IFT as well as SNAP. Active voice, passive voice, right? So that's something that you've got to keep in mind. And punctuation, right? So these are the 5 topics. Along with this, you've got our standard topics in grammar, which is parts of speech, pronoun errors, subject-verb agreement, verb tense, and parallel structure and modifiers, right? And then you've got miscellaneous usage errors. So these are all the topics which are there in grammar, things that you've got to cover. So it's a wide gamut of topics that you will have to cover. RCs, if, and this is a big if they are there in the exam, you've got super simple RCs, you've got nothing to worry about. As far as a course is concerned, you cover Wordpandit level 1 and level 2 RCs, more than enough, completely sufficient. In case you are not part of our course, you can solve previous year SNAP questions. Remember, with SNAP, the curious thing is they never release the actual papers. So whatever you've got memory based papers. A couple of leading publications have good books on SNAP, right? Previous year papers. So you can probably refer to those. So that's thing number 1. Or you could refer to an exam such as MAT as well, which is pretty easy RC. So this is for easy basic level practice. And in fact, my advice to you is don't worry explicitly about these RCs. If you are preparing for CAT RCs, right? CAT, SAT, IFT even, you're pretty much sorted for SNAP. So you don't need explicit practice for RCs for SNAP. So that's something that you can skip out, right? So that's one portion that you can probably save a little bit of time, and you can invest that time in grammar and vocabulary, right? So that's where additional work or input is needed. So that's something that you can do. Parajumbles, you practice from the course dashboard. In case you're not a course student, you solve previous year questions. You've got lots of CAT questions as well. For grammar, active, passive voice, figures of speech, that's also a very important topic. And indirect, direct speech, and the other topics that I mentioned, those are important. For vocabulary, if you're a course student, you cover the 120-day vocab builder, plus you attend the WhatsApp audio events that we will be conducting for our course students. You Also focus on things such as synonym and antonyms, vocabulary tests, word roots, go through idioms and phrases. So these are all the things which are present in the course. So you do that. People who are not in the course, please practice vocabulary questions for all these different topics. I've already covered the list of topics earlier in the earlier slides, the different topics that appear in SNAP. So A, practice questions for these topics. B, for vocabulary building, you can refer to Word Power Made Easy or 6 Weeks to Words of Power. This is by Wilfred Funk. These are the two books that you can refer to, right? We cover these two books in the course as well. So these are the books that you've got to refer to. As far as mocks and tests are concerned, previous year papers, as I've said earlier, they are not generally released, but you've got a couple of leading publications that you can depend upon. You should rely on mock tests and practice tests. Speed is the biggest determiner for SNAP. At least solve 5+ mock tests for SNAP, right? This is not about scores. This is not about practicing questions. Why am I suggesting 5+ mock CATs? Remember, you need to be in that mindset of solving questions in that 1 hour time limit. The problem that generally happens with a lot of students is when you prepare for CAT and ZAT primarily, your approach is an accuracy based approach. So when you keep an accuracy based approach, what happens is you do not give speed any importance, and with an exam such as SNAP, speed becomes very, very important. It becomes very, very critical. Hence, taking some practice tests with that mindset of scoring the maximum possible marks and solving the maximum number of questions within that given time limit becomes very, very important, and that's something that you should do for sure. This brings us to an end to this particular video. Hopefully so you're clear now how you should go about SNAP VARC prep. Thank you very much for watching this video. This is Prashant signing off, and as always, happy learning.